Test, test. Alright, that should be good. Can you hear that?
Kirby.
Alright.
Captain Falcon.
Do we want some ambient music? Maybe. Maybe that's the option. That'll work. Alright. So let's get this started.
3, 2, 1, go!
Alright, this week I'm flying solo. Last week, you guys couldn't hear Ray's, so it's not like I was flying solo last time and taking really long pauses, because he was talking and I was listening to him. And on the recording, I realized nobody could hear him, so we're kind of going to redo what I did last week. Going to talk about some of the same topics. Probably going to touch on kind of slightly more basic stuff than what we did before, but we're going to lead into what we did before because I hate wasting time. So, today, we're going to talk about threat zones. We'll start off with threat zones at least. So basically, threat zones, as I define them, are basically the amount of space that your character can immediately interact with. So, with Marth, it's kind of easy to see because he's got a sword, and he's got, so much space that he can immediately interact with. So it kind of creates a nice bubble for, where his sword is, where his sword might be, and what your opponent has to do to deal with it. So any move that your character can do adds to their immediate threat zone, and this kind of starts immediately where your character's standing and also where they can, immediately interact with. So think of it like they have this much immediate space where they can immediately throw out a move like a forward tilt or a jab or F smash or anything like that, and then they have a slightly bigger threat zone for immediate actions out of like dash or out of like a short hop, something that takes no time to actually do. So when you think about how much space Marth actually controls at one given point, right now if you're Donkey Kong, you're shitting your pants because that's, a free F tilt or free smash attack, free anything. And the thing about threat zones is they're not actually, it's not actually about, the fact that you have an option out, because like he can be respecting, me firing at him, and obviously that is threatening by itself. But the real thing about threat zones is that I don't have to throw out the fair. Me just jumping here is enough to threaten a fair. So in any given game, if you put yourself out there and you condition your opponent to think that you have moves, you're gonna put moves out, then within probably 2 interactions, they'll be looking for you to actually be throwing out moves, which in essence gives you basically more than actually the move would do, because I can hit him with fair and I get what fair would give me, but I can make him respect fair, not do the fair, get a free grab. So the idea of the threat zone is not necessarily the fact that you can hit them with a move, it's the fact that you have the ability to hit them with the move, but you're not doing it. So it's kind of hard to explain. It's a lot easier when I have somebody to kind of bounce my ideas off of because they can give me feedback, which is what I would hope chat would do. But tweeting about this 18 times doesn't get me a lot of viewers for some reason. But hopefully in the future these streams / videos get a little bit more attention. But the fact that I can tipper this Donkey Kong is enough for the Donkey Kong to need to respect that I'm there. That's what's important. It's not important that I do tipper him. It's the fact that he has to respect that I can. Which means that he has to, alter his positioning so that he's no longer in my bubble. And this applies to every state of the game, not only just sitting in like a neutral position. Me being in the air, I have a different type of threat zone than I would on the ground. And if I'm running, I have a different type of threat zone that way too. If I'm shielding, obviously I have a different type of threat zone that way. So it translates to every aspect of the game, but you have to be wary of what your options are in your threat zone and what your opponent has as their threat zone. Because DK has, all his moves that kind of control the space around him, and you know what to look out for, but you also have an idea of like the length that he has. Martha's the best example for showing off this stuff because all of his moves are big circles. They're all big circles, so you can kind of see what kind of space he controls. So basically the whole idea with threat zones is you create a space around yourself that is what your character can control, and then you impose that on your opponent. And again, what they're respecting is the fact that you can hit them, not the fact that you are hitting them. So, depending on the opponent, some of them will, try to get you away from them. They'll actually immediately counterattack as a preemptive to keep you at the distance. Some players will actually retreat so that they're out of your zone, which is what you kind of want, and we'll touch on that as we go along. But the whole idea is using your threat zone, you kind of impose your will on your opponent, and that's kind of a catalyst for everything else that I'm going to talk about, at least today. Mental game kind of bleeds into itself everywhere. Like everything that you could think of for why decision making happens, it's all intertwined together. Obviously it makes the game of Smash, but each aspect is very defined by itself and allows itself to other aspects of the game. So like threat zones, like obviously the first thing that would spring to mind when you think threat zones and you think about, oh well, my opponent has to respect what I'm doing, is pressure. Oh, I'm pressuring my opponent. That's free pressure, and that's precisely what it is just a catalyst of pressure. It's not, again, it's not the fact that I can tipper him. It's not the fact that I am tippering him. It's the fact that I could tipper him. That is what the opponent has to respect. There's nothing else. There's nothing else about it that the opponent is taking into account. Because like you think about like a really new player, they're kind of just throwing moves out and seeing what they can keep you away with, and they're not going to think about not pressing buttons. And a lot of even up to mid-level players will press buttons because they can press buttons. What I'm saying is that you don't have to press buttons to put that kind of pressure on your opponent, because I can hit Donkey Kong with whatever I want. I don't have to hit him with whatever I want to make him move. If you get what I'm saying. If I want him to respond to me, or if I want him to react to my position, I don't have to actually do anything. So this brings us into the next topic I want to talk about, is positioning. Now, when I was talking about positioning last week, which nobody got to see because my co-broadcaster couldn't be heard, so we're going to start fresh with that. Positioning essentially is the most important aspect of Smash. It's a really important aspect for like all fighting games, but especially Melee, PM, and like platform fighters in general. Where you are is incredibly important to what you want to do. So when you take an action, when you do something, in response to your opponent, everything has to lead back to positioning. So if you are in a neutral situation, neither of you have like stage control, neither of you have anything that is of value, so your positioning's not good. Now it's safe. Being safe is important depending on what you're going to do, but obviously it's a fighting game, so you want to be right up where you're pressuring your opponent, you're making their position as bad as it can possibly be. So everything you do in the game, whether you're hitting your opponent, whether you're going out on your opponent, whether you're edge guarding, whether it's neutral, you're wanting to fight for the best possible position. So in PM and in Melee, you have tools like crouch cancel to secure your position, to make sure that the position that you have right this second is something that you can keep. Because obviously low percents, when you get hit, you're not going to go anywhere, and you secure your position and you get your advantage because of crouch cancel. So, or ASDI down, which is better in some cases, most cases, because you can do it out of shield. So anything you do in the game, you want to think about securing the best possible position. And I would say sometimes you do have to sacrifice your good position so that you can get a guarantee on your opponent. Like the obvious example would be Falcon going out for a knee. It would be something that you would you'd be able to do. And sacrificing your position is not a big deal because you're killing them, and your position is good no matter what because you have staged and you're alive. So you want to stack your chips as fast as you can in your advantage and keep them. One of the big things that um, mid-level players I see, or low-level players I see, is they'll go in and they'll get position, and then they'll run back to the middle of the stage and get center stage. Where, when you think about like stage position, being where I am, even though he rolled past me, you have more of a threat. Your position's better than if you were, you know, than if you were center stage. Because even though the situation, me being right here is optimal because he's gonna land, he's gonna roll to right there. Me being here doesn't actually put any threat in this entire part of the stage. There's nothing I can do about him grabbing ledge and then getting up for free. It's all guaranteed there. So when you get a good position on your opponent, you want to keep it as much as you can. And a lot of the times this means not sacrificing it. Cuz like I can knock him off stage and I can go out on him for a really hard read and he's side B because he's a fucking com, but where he had me on the stage, I sacrificed my position. I don't have a position anymore. I have to recover. So he could have killed me. If you were an actual good player who was willing to either go out on me or just sit there and hit me for overextending, I could have died. So basically, your positioning is kind of an actualization of your threat zone. So me being close to Donkey Kong, again, because he's a com, he's not going to kind of play by the same mental rules that people do. But like, where my position is, it matters entirely to, hitting him or threatening to hit him. And obviously, the position that you have lends itself to stage control. So, using threat zones, using positioning, you apply pressure on your opponent and you can gain stage. I've lost my train of thought. It's been a long day. So, when thinking about like positioning, a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's spacing, right? That's about how you space moves and what hitbox you want to hit them with, right?" It's different because spacing is more about obviously the move itself, like where you hit the move and where and how you want it to hit. Martha's Fair having 3 different hitboxes on the blade, or Pikachu having different hitboxes on the tail for his up air. Like that kind of stuff is spacing. Spacing has to do with dodging too, but I want to say that spacing is like a part of positioning as a whole, but not like it's not more important, and it's not a totally separate thing. It's like a child of positioning. Like if you got, we use the stage as a backdrop, IDK. So if you've got, what? I selected a huge thing. Okay, so if you've got like threat zones, this kind of feeds into like several different things. One of them being positioning, and then out of that you have spacing. Spacing kind of lends itself to this, but it's more of, a roundabout. It goes through positioning because positioning is the parent the of the concept. And threat zones aren't the concept of everything. I would say positioning is more of a base than anything else, and threat zones are kind of a subsidiary idea that bolsters positioning. Because, your position wouldn't matter if you could hit people across the entire screen anywhere you want, because that's stupid, and that obviously wouldn't be a game. But that's why positioning matters, because you can't hit people with moves if, they don't connect, because my position is bad because I'm just hitting nothing. So my position has to be better so I can actually do stuff. So we're going to go into, from here, we're going to go into stage control. So I'm kind of shotgunning this shit because I don't have anybody to bounce my ideas off of, and I should write more about this stuff, so I kind of can read for you what I've got. But I'm sure I can respond to people at a later date. So when you think about positioning, the obvious application would be stage control. So for those who don't actually know what stage control is or don't practice stage control is prioritizing keeping more stage than your opponent. So if you look at my position right now, I've got all of this. This is mine. Yes, I can't control all of it at once, but because I am basically a brick wall, it's all mine. All of this is, he has to take it from me. And obviously he's recovering, so he's only really got to right here. But, in the case that he was... Now, let's see if... So, where he is right now, if I were facing him, I wish he rolled out of the corner because he's smart. Come here, buddy. Alright, so, we're in this position. He has nowhere to run. He has the ledge, which will allow him to, get up back onto the stage with a little bit of invincibility. But if he drops the ledge, that's enough time for me to react and move back, about that much. And I sit right here. Give him just a little bit of room to breathe, but not much. But he has essentially this much space to move. And I have this much space to move. And he has to challenge me to get over here. So, in this situation, I have the most stage control, and I have the best position. What a lot of players will do when they're not playing this type of game is they'll either go for a hard punish, go for a read if he's off stage or something like that, which, if the read's correct, it's correct. There's, it is what it is. As long as it's a read and not a guess. If it's a guess, then you're throwing away your position for nothing. If it's a read, obviously you kill him. So they either push the advantage too hard, where he'll just roll behind you if you dash in and grab him, or they don't realize they have such a huge advantage and have all this stage that they run and go to center stage, which gives him all this room, do a different color, gives him all this room to move instead of this much room. Because he's got that much room, and if you back up, you give him more room to move. You give him room to breathe. You don't want to give your opponent room to breathe. You don't want to allow them to make their own choices. You want to impose all of the situations on them because you control them and you can punish them for their decisions. So, if we go to a stage like Battlefield and we get in the same situation,
2, 1, go!
come here. So I'm a little more center stage here. Oh, perfect. So in this situation, the platform does mix things up a little bit. So instead of having, on FD this much space to move, he now has the option to go up on the platform, and he basically has, I would say, not that much. I would say he has probably about to like 3/4 of the platform that he can go to. Now that would be his action, that would be a move he makes to get past me, and it gives me plenty of time to react to that. And then what decisions come after that are what decisions come after that. But I still, control basically all that from my position. Granted, I was just kind of standing. Dashing, I'm not controlling nearly as much. I'm only controlling, this and, whatever's past me. But there's going to be an opening. If I were to act out of dash, I could get stuffed for it. But you get the general idea. Basically, when you get stage, when you get good positioning, you need to secure it, and then you need to keep it. There's a lot of value in playing to control stage and not to hit your opponent. A lot of zoners will do that. A lot of players like Ganondorf's kind of do that. Is they kind of gradually push up the stage. They start here, then they kind of challenge you to take their space from them, and then they push up the stage if you don't, until you are in the position that Donkey Kong's in. And that's how every character can play. You can play this way with probably anybody. I would say with the exception of like characters that are more hit and run, that die super fast, and don't have a whole lot of like walling out tools, like Fox and Falco and like Zero Suit have a lot of good tools for like immediate pushes and immediate control, but they don't have actual. It's not like a brick wall's coming at you. It's just like an individual brick, if you get what I'm saying. So when I play this way. I want to get stage, and I want to push you into a corner, and I want to keep you there until you're dead. Now, obviously, playing against new people, playing against new matchups that you don't know, there's only so much you can do to keep a person in the box. You don't want to take too many risks when you don't know what you're fighting against, whether the person is aggressive off the ledge or if they're really smart off the ledge, or if they just have options that you didn't know about, or the options they don't know how to cover yet, or that your character can't cover. Those type of things exist. So if you get him into the box and you get him into a situation where he has ledge or he has anything else like that, you could probably sit in anywhere in this yellow line and you apply enough pressure, at least at ledge, or at least at the current position, so that they have to get past you. But if Donkey Kong or whatever character Donkey Kong happens to be is off stage, if you know the matchup, you can be where Donkey Kong is, standing right there, and applying as much pressure as possible, and then retreating to, the back line when you know you either can't cover the option or you fail to cover the option, and you only go out when you have a read, when you know what they're going to do, or you know that your character has enough tools to cover it, because you don't want to sacrifice positioning for nothing. You want to sacrifice it for a kill. So let me go into kind of what I mean by playing to hit your opponent versus playing to control stage. You can switch between the two. Like you're not stuck doing one or the other, because you can play to hit your opponent and get as much percent as possible off of 0 and get the string. It is still, depending on the matchup, better to just get them off stage and get them in this position as fast as possible. But there are some matchups where you do want to stack percent as fast as possible and then work to get them into this position so that you touch of death them. You know, touch of death being not a combo, but just you can trade with them, you can do anything you want and get them off stage, and then they're dead because they suck at recovering or whatever the whatever the situation happens to be, whatever the character happens to be, you allow yourself to get a free punish from not really doing a whole lot of work. So what I find a lot of players doing is they play to hit their opponent and they don't play to control stage or to get good position. They're kind of chasing their opponent around the screen and trying to go for really hard reads or go for really hard guesses or just try to hit your opponent no matter what. And when you lose sight of stage position and positioning in general, you end up putting yourself in really, really bad situations without realizing it, and that's when good players will just kill you for those bad decisions. You might not even realize they're bad decisions. You get like a situation where you knock somebody down, you get the read on their like tech back or tech away or tech in, or you get a read on it, and you sacrifice good positioning to go for that read. Whether you get the read or not, if the player is in a situation where they can retain their positioning or their stage control, you could die for it. And that doesn't take a lot of work. Like, when I talk about positioning to most players, it is by far the most important aspect of the game, and it doesn't take a lot to do it. So, I don't have to know combos to be good if I just know how to do positioning stuff. So if I'm Marth, okay? Just pretend I'm Marth. If I'm always where I need to be, when I need to be there, throwing out a tipper, even if all I know how to do is hit an F smash, I'm going to win a lot of matches until, you get to a point where people are able to bait me and punish me for it. But, think about Borp, like how Borp plays. Borp plays, it looks like it's just zero brain stuff. He's just throwing moves out and they work. It's not that simple. He's picked a position and he's just defending it until he dies. And like, he's not actively thinking, I'm going to do this is what I'm going to do. He's just doing it in the best possible way he can. And it works because it's what's important about the game. So, when you put an effort into positioning, or when you put an effort into playing when you want to get a lot better at the game, think about securing your position instead of hitting your opponent, and you'd be amazed how many opportunities just fall into your lap. Because, like, one of the things that mid-level players will do is they'll either see opportunities that are happening now, and they're not in good position to capitalize, but they try to capitalize anyways, and then they overextend and die. Let me get all this shit off the screen. Oh, DK. So, if I see him go off stage and I just go out for a knee, then Like, I'm just taking a risk that I don't need to do. But like, you see opportunities because you're like, oh, he's gonna jump, and then he doesn't, and then you're all the way out here kneeing nothing. Or maybe you do see him jump, but you still do the same thing where you go out and knee, and he's already above you because he's already jumped. Stuff like that. Another thing that people will do is they'll know the opportunity exists, but they'll act too soon on the opportunity. Where like, if you think about how, like Marth, if you delay a fair or you hit a fair on a certain hitbox of a fair, then you knock the opponent a certain way, and then you get the Ken combo because of that, not because you just swing your sword. You could swing your sword all day, you'll end up knocking your opponent to 200% and eventually killing them, but you'll miss out a million opportunities to kill them because you're just swinging your sword constantly.